Bryan's mom. I don't know a lot of you, so I wanted to introduce myself. And this is a very joyous occasion. But I'm going to start it on a somewhat somber note. I have to tell you about an awful time. Bryan was injured when he was very young.
Oh, God. Was it a bedwetting injury?
There were some relations to that.
This is going to be fun. I'm excited.
We had lived in a home out in Manassas, Virginia, which was a pretty little house. Have you lived in Manassas?
He's already arguing with her.
When you come from Horseshoe Drive, Manassas is a step up. And finally, Keith walked into the house one day and tripped over one more toy, and he said, "That's it, we've got to move." Yeah, Keith is... So we bought a really pretty house in Fairfax. It was a rancher with a lower level walkout. Bryan was always the most rambunctious of the three. And as you walked in the front hall, you had a stair going down to the rec room. That was carpeted. Unfortunately, the hallway was tiled, and there was this metal lip at the top of the steps. Well, these guys were 2.5 years old, and they were in their little training pants, and then their little pull-up pants that were elastic. Well, Bryan decided he had to slide down those steps. And guess what, folks? It wasn't on his rear. It was the other way around. Well, he slid down partway and let out this piercing scream. And guess what had happened? The lip had caught the panties right on down. And guess what was hanging out? He was screaming. I was hysterical. Certain parts were purple and blue and swollen. And I immediately got on the phone and called the pediatrician and told him what had happened. And he said, "Has he been able to urinate?" And I said, "Well, it just happened." I didn't know. He said, "If he can't within the half hour, call me back and I'll meet you in the emergency room." He said, "Otherwise, I'll see him at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning in my office." Well, fortunately, Bryan came through. So we didn't have to go to the emergency room.
Yay!
We had a wonderful pediatrician at that time. His name was Dr. Orlowski, and he was sort of like a modern-day Santa Claus. He was somewhat rotund, and he had, was sort of bald and fringe, a little bit of a beard, but he loved his children. And we got there the next morning and went in, and Dr. Orlowski had his office where he always kept his door open because he wants to see his little patients as they come in. And the room was full. I mean, it was, kids were always sick, all these mothers in there with all these kids. And Dr. Orlowski was sitting back at his desk with the door open, and Bryan spied him. And he could not pronounce the name Orlowski at the time. It was Dr. Orlowski. And he saw him and he says, "Dr. Orlowski, guess what? I tripped over my dinghy and then I got a blow's need." Well, Dr. Orlowski got up from behind his desk, walked around, came out into the waiting room, and said, "I want to shake the hand of the man who can trip over his dinghy."